Carol and Cheryl, Cheryl and Carol, Carol and Cheryl.
Hi, welcome back to Conversations with Carol and Cheryl. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Cheryl. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Yep, I'm doing well.
Who do we have today?
So today we have a special guest, Cindy Sellitto. She joins us today to share her daughter Kim's story and to explain how Kim's Krew came about. Kim's Krew is a nonprofit organization who provides assistance such as beds, meals, cleaning, and hygiene products to the homeless, families, and children in need. And Cindy will get more into this in detail. Welcome to the show, Cindy.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, Cindy.
It's
Welcome.
nice to see you both.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Carol and Cheryl, and sharing your story.
Oh, my pleasure.
So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I am Cindy Sellitto. We're originally from Connecticut. We migrated to Florida approximately 5 years ago. I am a mother of two. One is in heaven, and the other one is on earth with us, and my grandchildren and my husband live here. I was a legal assistant paralegal my entire adult life. I have spent part of that time also raising, showing dogs, which was my love for many, many years. And now I'm retired. And I run a nonprofit in Bradenton, Florida. So that's kind of a small.
That nonprofit is a result of your child that you said is in heaven. So
My oldest daughter, Kim, my firstborn, at the age of 36, was murdered by her fiance in a brutal domestic violence incident, crime, whatever you want to refer to it as. It is by far the most horrific thing that could happen to a mom and a dad and a sister and a family and friends. I mean, it just ripples. There's a ripple effect. It destroyed us, absolutely disseminated us. Even though you know as a parent that your child is not necessarily with the right person, but she was an adult. And she spent 5 years with this person, and he was verbally, psychologically abusive most of the time that they were together, that I could see. They lived in a different state, and I watched my daughter dwindle as psychologically from a very strong person to a shadow of herself at the end. We never had any indication that he was physically abusive. You just never expect that anything that horrific could possibly happen to you or your family.
how long ago was that?
She's been gone 7 years. She was murdered November 17th, 2013. There are many days where it feels like it just happened. You know, I've kind of been saddled with PTSD and anxiety because of it. I spend most of my time working very hard not to dwell on that, and working with Kim's Krew does help me cope with it.
And that's 7 years. You're still trying not to dwell on it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about her every single day, every day. The holidays are brutal. Life events are brutal that she should be at. We have grandchildren, both of which she was in their life for a very short period of time. But every time they have a birthday or an event, she should be there. She should be here now. She should be working on Kim's Krew with me. She was very much a people person, always looking out for the underdog. And the plan was that she was going to come to Florida with us.
What attracted her to him? What was the thing that made her stay with him?
Well, as I've told other women who have been in similar situations but have survived, Kim had part of the responsibility of this relationship. And her part in all this was having terrible choices in men. And I would shake my head. I could never understand why she always went for this certain type of person, always the bad guy, always looking to fix someone, always liked the bad boys. You know, she came from a pretty square parents and kind of middle America, blue collar, hardworking. And she worked, don't get me wrong, she was a very hard worker. But I could never wrap my head around, she would bring somebody home and my eyes would roll back in my head. Like, why, where did this one come from? And I think the worse they were, the more she figured she could fix them. Mm-hmm. That's all they could figure. They were together almost 5 years, and not to my liking, but you make a choice. She died at 36. You know, she met him in her early 30s. My heart and soul said, make him go away. And you have to make a choice. Do I throw an absolute fit and tell her, you know, all the terrible things and she should never bring him home and I don't want him here and blah, blah, blah? Or do you accept and keep your child?
What happened to Kim? How was she murdered?
She had moved with him to Long Island. He worked as a tattoo artist. She was in management at Walmart and then moved on to Whole Foods. I had 18 witness reports from the homicide detective. She lived in a condo, like association, and there were 18 reports of people that either saw him kill her or heard all the commotion. The morning of her murder, she and I refer to him as Satan, apparently had quite an argument via text. He had 2 children from a previous relationship and he was off picking up his kids. Never got all the gory details from the homicide detective, but there was quite an argument going back and forth. The last thing on her phone was a picture, his stuff thrown on the bed, and the text said, you better find another place to live. And they fought quite frequently. That I know. From there was a few interviews with children after the fact. It must have gotten very verbal and very violent. And he pulled a gun out of the closet and beat her in the face and knocked her on the ground. And we found out from later that, from the children, that he had broken every bone in her face with the gun. But she was strong enough to get up. And she ran out the front door, at which point he shot twice and missed her. And she ran down the sidewalk, screaming for help and begging someone to call 911. And apparently no one let her in. And he stepped out on the stoop, the one step, and put a bullet in her head, the back of her head, and in her back. She died right there. And he left her out there, let his children out of the apartment and the dogs. Apparently, from what the witnesses said, the dogs would not leave her. And then he yelled to the kids. I mean, who does that? To get away from her and get in the house. She was dead. And these are in reports from neighbors all in that vicinity. And he barricaded himself in the house with his little children, who were like 6 and 7, 5 and 7, I can't remember anymore, and proceeded to have a shootout with the police, with the SWAT team. And I will never in a million years understand how they didn't shoot him. I would assume it was because the kids were in the house. We had to be there the next day the house was riddled with bullets. I mean, there wasn't anything that didn't have bullet holes in it. The doors, the windows, everything. Every door jamb was broken. The place was just like an explosion. And we had to be there to get her keys to the cars and meet the detective and go to the morgue, which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And we never did get to see her. They wouldn't let us see her because she was a crime scene. So out came this very straight-faced, non-emotional human being who sat in a chair, opened up a manila envelope, and showed me a picture of her face in a body bag. That was it. That's all we got. So we had to wait till the following day because they had to finish the autopsy until she was sent home to Connecticut. So that's about all we know. Their relationship was not good. He was a psychopath. He was controlling. He had managed to alienate her from all of her friends. He alienated her from his friends. He would accuse her of having affairs with other people. He cost her her job. I'll never know until I see her again why she didn't leave. I mean, I was trying to get her to leave. The last year was brutal. I had sent her a burn phone because he had hacked her phone, her computer, anything that she had with a password, he had it. And here was this strong daughter of mine, and I kept saying, what are you doing? You know, why? It's much easier just to let him have the passwords. She adored the children, his children, and took care of them most of the time. And that was the excuse that I would get. And she would tell her girlfriends this because he would always make it impossible for her to have her friends come to Long Island. At the last minute, there would always be some stupid reason or some event, and the whole thing would get canceled. And it was all because of him.
So what happened to him?
They put him in a county jail. There was a grand jury hearing the next day, apparently, and an indictment, and he went into county jail. And it took 2 solid years to get to court for the very first time. 2 years of waiting, 2 years of postponements, 2 years of the judge being changed, his court-assigned criminal defense lawyer being fired, and 6 months before we thought we were going to court, our wonderful assistant state's attorney got a promotion. And I did this for a living. I mean, I was in litigation for 40 years, and it's like, wow, this all can't be happening in one case. So it took 2 years to step foot in court to have our very first hearing. They do things much differently in New York than in Connecticut. We went to court. We thought we were hearing the testimony of the SWAT team officer who had been fired at by him. While we were sitting there waiting, as they went through the roll call of all the cases that day, the courts kept getting thinning out. All the cases were going. Little did we know we were last. The reason we were last is that was his last day to take the plea bargain that had been offered him day one. The charges were 40 years for attempting to kill a police officer and 30 years for second-degree murder. And, you know, people ask me, well, doesn't that bother you? No, 70 years is 70 years. I don't care. The thing that bothered me was that part of the plea bargaining was that it would not be consecutive. It was concurrent. So that meant he would get either 30 or 40. Mm-hmm. And the other part of the plea bargain was 30 to life, which means he has to do 30, can't do a day less. and then he can apply for parole. And he refused all this time until he finally got his second very good defense lawyer. And I was thrilled because I looked him up and I knew he was a very experienced attorney who told him, you better take the plea deal because the cards were completely stacked against him. So he took it and he was sentenced to 30 to life. And that was the next time we saw him, was at the sentencing. And we gave our victims' impact statements and off he went. On Kim's 5th year anniversary, I just couldn't let it go. I flew to New York and I faced him. I had questions and more. I sat for 5 years thinking, here he is. He's in a state penitentiary. He's pumping iron and getting a degree and, you know, all these other things that were rolling through my head. And it took a lot to go, but I did. And I faced a shadow of an individual that went in. And I needed to see that. I needed to see that he was doing his time. And he apparently had been in several altercations because he was missing half of his teeth. And he was, like I said, a shadow of the human being that went in. And I'm glad that's what I saw. I'm glad I didn't see some pumped up, very overconfident individual. And I had a lot to say and I left.
Did he apologize to you? Did he
tried.
Show any remorse?
Yeah, cried like a baby, but wasn't buying it at all. Not at all. I had a few things to say, and I don't know if I got through how he destroyed so many lives. Then I left, and I left on my terms. And when I was done talking, I turned my back and out the door I went, and I put that to bed. I mean, I never thought about that or him being in there again, which was a good thing. Very hard to do, but I was glad I did it. It was one less box to worry about.
So how did Kim's death affect your family? How did it affect your other daughter?
My youngest daughter is now an only child, and she's very much introverted, and she does not talk about it a lot, hardly at all. And knowing her, she's like that with everything. I know what eats her up, and she'll put a little smidgen on Facebook on her birthday or how much she misses her, but it's very little. She bottles it all up. They're 3 years apart, but they were like oil and water, night and day. People would look at the two of them and say, "You're two are sisters." They didn't look alike. They didn't act alike. They had very little in common. And we had a very elderly aunt say to us once when they were small, "Are these two from the same parents?" But they were so different. But if either one of them were in trouble or there was a need to defend, they jumped for the other one's defense. But my youngest daughter, like I said, very much bottles everything up. And, we all try to just cope with it the best we can. We have little memorial things around the house. We have a Kim tree that we put up every holiday, and it's all purple. And we have ornaments with her friends' pictures with her and my grandchildren with her, and pieces of her jewelry. It all started with, she had a ton of bangle bracelets. And that's what started the Christmas tree. Mm-hmm. And the first year was brutal because she was murdered in November, right after her birthday, which was Halloween. And on the 17th, she was murdered. And the next week was Thanksgiving. And then it was Christmas. And I have 2 little grandchildren that live with us at the time. And we have to go on. And it was like living in a fog, having an out-of-body experience and looking down on all these events or at them. But you can't just crawl up in a ball because the kids have to go on and life has to go on. And I found it, I couldn't understand how everybody could just be having such a happy, Merry Christmas. And here we were. It's like, how come the whole world didn't stop? But, we're one of millions of people that this happens to. And nobody realizes what they go through and how brutal it is. The holidays were awful. And the timing, not that it would have been good any time of year to lose your child to that, but my birthday's in September. My other daughter, her birthday's October. Kim's birthday's October. So from the 2nd of September on, it's just this rolling of events. And it's a hard time of year for us to get through. But we do it, and we put up Christmas trees, and we've got the best lit house on the street. And Halloween at our house, from the time Kim was born, she thought Halloween was because it was her birthday. And we still decorate like there's no tomorrow. And in honor of her, and because it's been such a tradition, we decorate like Christmas on Halloween. And we have the best Halloween house on the street too, I'll have you know. For our whole family, it's almost an unreal event. It doesn't happen to average people, we thought. I mean, how could it happen to us? How could she be brutally murdered like that? You see it on TV, you see it on the news, but this is your daughter. It's almost unreal that it can happen. But we joined a wonderful support group called Survivors of Homicide. The best thing we ever did, and they should have it in every state in the union. Everywhere you go, you're the parents of the murdered daughter. Everybody, you're the elephant in the room. We went to this support group, and the minute we walked in the door, we felt like we were kind of home. We were in a club that nobody else wants to be in, but it was a wonderful group. And people who had lost their children, not just children, a member of their family to homicide, or more than one. So you think life is so bad for you until you get into a group like this, where people have lost multiple family members. And it's just mind-boggling and heartbreaking, but everybody gets you. And it was a wonderful group to be attached to, and very, very much supportive. And that helped us immensely, really did.
What kind of things do they do? Do you just go in and you just share your feelings, or?
It was very low-key and very casual. Going was brutal the first time. There are members there, and they introduce themselves, and anyone who attends that meeting goes around the room and tells you about their experience and what's happened to their mother, their father, their children, and gives you the whole experience of their murder or murders. And then you're last. Some people just can't get it out. But if you choose to, you share what's happened to you. Our case was in New York, so we didn't have much conversation about our ongoing issues, where other families were talking about what was going on with their cases in Connecticut, because it's a long, drawn out, no matter where you are. And there's all kinds of issues with everyone's cases. We had a woman that ran this group that also attended court with the families for moral support, because you can end up going to court numerous times. And she was wonderful. She worked with the court systems in every county and helped these families understand. And a lot of times they don't need to be there. We also celebrated different events, whether it be Christmas. We had a Christmas dinner with a memorial tree for everyone, and you could go light a candle. And this was also back before balloons were kind of banned because of what they do to animals and the ecology. So one year we had a balloon little ceremony. Another year it was Chinese lanterns. And just to memorialize the people that we've lost in our life.
So when you're not with people that have experienced the same thing, like a lot of people just don't know what to say. Do you want people to talk about it? Do you want people to, bring up her name, or would you prefer not to? Because we have a mutual friend that lost a daughter, and I say, oh, do you mind? And she's like, no, I don't mind at all. I like it. So is that your case?
I would welcome it with
Okay.
open arms. I find that adults, use that, and I know this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but use it as an excuse. Oh, I don't know what to say. That gets old. It really does, because it's not about them. Just kind of suck it up a little bit and go give somebody a hug or say, how you doing? Since you lost Jan or Kim, or they'll let you know if they don't want to talk about it, but they probably will greet you with open arms. When children or family members, especially tragic, everything's tragic when your kids die, but no one talks about them. No one will say their name out loud. And that bothers me. That's why I started Kim's Krew, because I wanted her name repeated. It's soothing to know that someone really cared about your child or wants to talk about them, talk about the good things, talk about the bad things, talk about anything that has to do with that young man, young woman, good, bad, or indifferent. But closing up and acting like they didn't exist is more hurtful, I think, to parents than anything else. I found that very hard, that all of a sudden it was like she disappeared. Kim was a very charismatic girl with a lot of friends, and she had a group of 5 or 6 very close friends that we saw all the time. They'd come to our house for every event, Christmas, if we were having a bonfire out in the backyard, whatever the event was, the kids' birthdays. When Kim died, it all disappeared. It's like you just don't lose that person. You lose their village. And that was huge for us because we're used to that. Yes, talk about them.
That's
Okay.
really good advice.
I hope so.
So, Cindy, you mentioned a couple times Kim's Krew.
Yes.
How was that born?
Well, back in Connecticut, the second year after her murder, I decided that I had to do something positive. We were always a big family into helping others, and Kim was, like I said, she was always looking out for the underdog, whether if it was at school or in her job. At her wake, I can't tell you how many people came up to us that worked for her from New York to Connecticut, telling us how, Kim always had my back at work. If we ever got into trouble, I could always go to her, and she would stick up for us with, the upper management. And I heard it over and over again, how she always looked out for the people that worked for her. I decided that I needed to turn some part of this into something positive. So we started Kim's Krew with a K, Krew, and we started helping the homeless in Connecticut. People freeze to death in the winter in Connecticut. So we started making helping handbags, big duffel bags the first year. We joined up with a mission in Hartford that housed the homeless. And I can't believe the outpouring of supplies that we got from friends and family and people that we worked with. And we collected them for about a month. And everything that we put in the bags were to help keep anyone who was on the streets warm, from foot warmers to hand warmers to socks, hats, gloves, mittens. We filled them with power foods that, could be portable. We filled 75 bags the first time, and I mean duffel bags, not backpacks. And then the second round, we filled close to, I think, 54 more. And we brought them to this mission in Hartford, and they handed them out to their homeless community. And that was our first event. And the next year, we started packing and getting ready to move down here. So once I got to Bradenton, I have a nephew who's in the sheriff's office here, and he gave me a tour of the city. I was going to pick up where I left off, because now I was retired. and not working, a million hours a week. And I had the time, and this is what I wanted to do. And down here, it was more seasonal. Every season, I was collecting and making bags. For rainy season, it was ponchos and umbrellas and anything to keep people dry. Tents, sleeping bags, whatever I could get my hands on. In the summer, it was things to keep people from dropping of heat exhaustion. Well, after a year and a half of that, our clientele, I guess, kind of changed. Our name got around Bradenton, and people started contacting us through Facebook. And what we were receiving were more inquiries for help and assistance from families. As we grew, we began noticing that there is an entire invisible group of people in Bradenton and probably every other city. The working poor, the almost homeless, the newly housed. They don't have enough money to get food through the month. They will get into an apartment or some sort of a home, and with help from different organizations in town, but they're moving into when I mean empty apartment. They have no beds. They're sleeping on the floor. They do not have a fork or a spoon. There's nothing for their kitchens. And there's families of, whether it be a couple or a family with 2 or 3 children. And I get repeated calls that, the kids are sleeping on air mattresses that have holes in them. And we don't have any sheets, and we don't have any beds, and we don't have any kitchen, anything. So we started focusing on that.
So when you say, just for people that think about doing what you're doing, when you say, so I got my hands on as many tents as I could, what's that mean? Were you buying them? Did you write places and say, hey, this is what I'm doing?
I beg. I went on Facebook and also Nextdoor, and I would put my pleas, and I still do it now. Even though we've become a 501, I have pleas out there all the time. But back then we lived strictly by the donations and of our neighbors, friends, especially people on Nextdoor, a tremendous community of giving people. My friends from up north still donate to us.
So for people, like I say, I'm asking these questions for people that want to do it. And I've often thought about these things, but I'm just oh God, I don't know how to start and all that. And one of the second things I think people think about is that just something that's constantly pulling at your heartstrings, maybe bringing your spirit down, that you get calls saying, hey, we need sheets and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think that fear comes in, if you start something like that, are you going to always have that heavy heart for people?
Well, I think that's just part of my genetics. I come from my mother was like that too. It was always, I don't remember a dinner or a holiday where there wasn't someone at our table that didn't have a place to go. That's just kind of inbred in me. And actually, it makes me feel better to help somebody. It really does.
So it doesn't weigh on you.
It does. It's a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. If I have to walk away from a homeless family that's in their car with kids, and I've just given them, 4 sleeping bags and a big, huge thing of food to get through a day or 2 or whatever, because they don't have a refrigerator. And we're trying to work with them on getting them housing, but there's an array of issues. Evictions, cuts them out of the market right away. Somebody's not working, or they're in between jobs, or the stories go on, but we're following them everywhere, trying to help them. It's no easier for me today than it was 4 years ago to walk away from that car and know I'm going home to sit my bum on a nice couch, and I'm leaving them in a car. And I cry all the way to my car.
Yeah.
But I get up the next morning and I figure out where they are, and I bring them whatever, and I do it again. Because, and our whole group is like that. We get all caught up in it for the moment or the person, and the aim is to get them out of that situation. We've now developed a good core of other agencies that we work with or can turn people to. We don't just throw a pamphlet at them and say, here's 57 places to check. We've vetted these places and know who can possibly help them, get them to the next level. It's not easy, and it's sad. I mean, the hardest thing I find is there's no emergency housing in this county, or in most down here. When someone comes to you crying and you listen to their story for an hour, it's not for me to judge how they got there. Life's kicked them around quite a bit, and it could have been their fault or partially their fault or whatever. That doesn't matter. The fact that they, in a week or a day or whatever, or now, have no place to go, and I have nowhere to send them, that's the part that gets me. There's no emergency housing. There's no shelters. It's very, very disheartening and frustrating. And to say, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you, it kills me every time. But we keep at it because we're hoping that we can do something to get that changed. And that's my dream, is at the end of all this, is to have a place called Kim's Village for emergency housing for 3 to 6 months if it takes, because it takes people at least that long. If they've got nothing and they have been evicted for whatever reason, a lot of people just kind of close their eyes. Well, it's not going to happen today. It's going to happen next week, and they're not prepared, and they don't have any family or anywhere to go. Their place gets literally locked up by a sheriff and everything gets thrown out. So now they're not only homeless, but they have no belongings. My hope is to be around long enough to have a village called Kim's Village, where a family can go, be safe, and have 4 walls around them and beds and a place to regroup, maybe learn, get some education, whether it be trade-wise, get some job help, places to learn how to get some skills. Their kids, there will be daycare available off-site, regroup, get to work, save some money, hopefully get a steady job and be able to become part of the workforce again and get their own place. But that's the big dream at the end. I hope that my health holds out long enough that I can do that. In the meantime, we help one family at a time. We feed families. Also, we have a small pantry now for people that are housebound. We have that community. It could be a mother with 4 kids. She has no vehicle. She's obviously not working. Can't get to a food pantry because they don't have a vehicle. The drive-thrus, you have to have a car. I sent a homeless man last year to one of those, and they told him to turn around and go. If you don't have a vehicle, you can't go through those. So it leaves me speechless sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, it's heartbreaking. How can people find Kim's Krew if they want to make a donation or just get more information?
We have a website. We also have a Facebook page. On our Facebook page, which is Kim's Krew with a K, Krew, it lists our website, our phone number. There's our general phone number for housing related items. And there's also our food pantry. We have a program, Beds for the Bedless. You would be amazed. We've probably given away, in excess of 30 beds in the past 3-4 months.
Wow.
We take in gently used or new twin beds, box springs, frames, bedding, pillows, the whole 9 yards. And we stick to twins because we have a mid-sized truck and we borrow a tiny little open trailer. And we're hoping that someone is going to dump a trailer our way, one of those little nice covered ones with the door. We do bathrooms. towels, hygiene products, and complete beddings. We don't do living rooms because we don't have the muscle or the vehicles. If somebody can sleep in their own bed and be able to cook a meal, and we do provide emergency food for a month, which will give a family at least a start, because usually by the time they pay their whatever subsidies they get from Turning Points or Suncoast and their finances, they have nothing left. So if we can give them that much to get started, it's a little push in the right direction and gives them a little chance to recoup maybe for the next month. Our pantry also provides for people who are in wheelchairs or disabled. They can't get to a food pantry. They're on very limited incomes. And we do have a small delivery group of volunteers, a very small one. If you know anybody that wants to help us deliver, let us know. We've done it pretty quickly, but it's taken us 4.5 years to get to this point. And we're only hoping to grow so we can help more people. We're kind of restricted by the size of our little facilities. We have 2 places that we rent. We're nonprofit, so we're not making, we're nonprofit. Rentals for our 2 spaces are very expensive, but we need more space in order to help more people. So that's what our aim is to get more space and also to get ourselves a covered trailer so that we can deliver, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, and weather won't be part of our, sorry, we can't deliver this week. But that's kind of a little bit of basically what we do.
It's amazing. It's really amazing, the service that you provide.
Well, we're trying this. Like I said, this whole group of people found us, and they're invisible. Nobody really knows they exist, and they found us, and we're kind of bringing it light that you have an entire population of working poor people that no one seems to know exist. A lot of these families are so on the edge. It only takes one bad thing, and they can lose everything. A car breaks down. Somebody loses a job. That's devastating. Then they lose the job. They lose the apartment. They get evicted. Then they're homeless. It's not that many steps. So we do what we can to try to help them not go down that drain or come out of the drain, whichever we can do. We're not always successful.
One of the things that we can do is we will put your contact information in our show description.
Oh, that would be awesome.
With links. And if any listeners want to donate to Kim's Krew, those links will be in there. So
that's fabulous.
Let's say somebody is not in Bradenton and is a listener and they want to help. Is the best thing to do just to send money?
Absolutely. You can go right on our website and there is a donation tab. And we welcome with open arms donations, because we're always planning on the next, what can we get next for this group to make it improve? And it's always a struggle. We did have a CARES grant and that ran out. We literally live by donations, whether they're in kind, beds, mattresses, blankets, sheets, whatever. We buy our food from Manatee County Food Bank, but everything else is pretty much donated. And you can do it right through the website, and it's very user-friendly.
If somebody has a truck and some muscle in Bradenton and they want to help, can they just use those same links to contact you?
Yes, through our website. Actually, through Facebook is even a quicker way to get a hold of us. We can use all the muscle and help we can get, because right now it's my husband and one other volunteer that do all the home deliveries, and we could use the extra help. We're really looking for people that are willing to deliver to our home families, deliver food, and we send everyone in pairs.
So you don't need a truck for that. You can just use your car. It's just groceries, right?
Van. It's groceries, but quite a bit of groceries. It's usually a month's supply. But it fits in a car. We're COVID safe, and we're concerned about where people have to travel, and always in pairs. So if it's somebody that wants to volunteer and drive, we'll make sure that somebody is with them.
Well, you have a lot of courage, Cindy, and a very, very big heart.
I appreciate it.
I like what you've done with Kim's name, and kind of paying it forward and keeping her alive.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's the main game, is her name will be repeated as long as Kim's Krew stays going forward. And long after I'm gone, somebody's saying Kim's Krew. That was my hope.
That's awesome. I'm sure it will keep going.
Everybody needs to pay it forward. That's my thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Any little thing. If everybody does that, the world would be a little bit better every single day. Buy the person a cup of coffee. It could be hold a door open. It doesn't have to be anything.
About 5 years ago, I was in between. It was so funny. I was in between. It's a long story, but I was in between selling a house, and I was paying for that one, and I was paying for my townhouse, and I was moving from one to the other, waiting for one to sell, and I was strapped with money, and it was very stressful. And my son and I were going through the Chick-fil-A, and someone had paid my meal. And I started to cry. It was like, I could not, because I was just so frazzled. And it was just a Chick-fil-A meal, but I was so, I couldn't believe it. And it was just a little thing. And you're right, just a little thing.
It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just something like that.
And like you said, it makes you feel good too. Everyone's a winner.
Yes.
Well, Cindy, I really enjoyed hearing your story, and I appreciate you sharing it with me. You have so much courage, such a big heart. Everything that you're doing, the homeless people and these needy people in Bradenton, it's just amazing. You're an amazing woman. And I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Here's to Kim.
Carol and Cheryl, thank you. Carol and Cheryl, thank you.